remote London suburb of Enfield, the Hodgson family's home became the site of one of the most chilling and well-documented paranormal cases in history. The haunting began in August 1977 when Peggy Hodgson, a single mother of 4, reported strange and terrifying events that would soon spiral out of control. The story of the Enfield poltergeist would go on to shock the world, leaving behind a legacy of fear and skepticism that endures to this day. It all started with small, unexplainable incidents in the modest council house at 284 Green Street. Peggy's daughters, Margaret, 14, and Janet, 11, were the first to experience something unnatural. Janet told her mother that her bed was shaking at night, but Peggy dismissed it as a child's imagination. However, when loud knocking noises began reverberating through the walls, even Peggy couldn't ignore the strange happenings. The knocking would seem to come from within the walls themselves, growing louder and more frequent each night, as if something or someone was trapped and trying to get out. One evening, Peggy heard a commotion upstairs. When she entered her daughter's room, she witnessed a terrifying sight. A chest of drawers was moving on its own, seemingly being pushed across the room by an invisible force. She tried to push it back, but an unseen power resisted her efforts. In a panic, Peggy and her children fled to a neighbor's house, seeking refuge from whatever dark entity had invaded their home. The neighbors, shaken by the family's experience, called the police. When the officers arrived, they too witnessed strange events. One officer, WPC Carolyn Heaps, signed an official statement claiming she had seen a chair move on its own across the room. Despite their disbelief, the police could offer no explanation and left, stating that it was beyond their jurisdiction. The strange phenomena escalated rapidly. Furniture moved by itself, objects flew across the room, and the loud knocking intensified. Janet, in particular, seemed to be the focus of the poltergeist's attention. The activity grew more violent, with toys thrown around the room, blankets ripped off beds, and strange, inexplicable noises echoing throughout the house. The family lived in constant fear, unsure of what terror the night would bring. As the haunting continued, it took an even more terrifying turn. Janet began to exhibit strange behavior, falling into trances and speaking in a deep, gravelly voice that wasn't her own. The voice claimed to be Bill Wilkins, a man who had died in the house years before. The sinister voice often spoke of his death, claiming that he had died in the living room after suffering a hemorrhage. "I'm still here," the voice would rasp, chilling those who heard it to the bone. Janet herself seemed to have no memory of speaking when she awoke from these trances, further alarming her family. Investigators and journalists who visited the house to witness the phenomena were horrified by what they encountered. Furniture levitated in front of their eyes, objects hurled themselves at visitors, and the eerie voice emanating from Janet filled the room with a palpable sense of dread. Janet's voice was recorded on tape, and despite its unnatural tone, no ventriloquism or trickery could explain it. The voice seemed to belong to a tortured spirit, Bill Wilkins, who continued to make his presence known through violent outbursts. Desperate for answers, the Hodgson family reached out to paranormal investigators. Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair from the Society for Psychical Research arrived at the house and began documenting the poltergeist activity. Over the course of several months, they witnessed more than 2,000 supernatural events, objects moving without explanation, furniture shaking, and Janet levitating in mid-air. Photographs were taken of Janet suspended in the air as if being thrown by an unseen force. The investigators noted that the activity seemed to grow more intense when Janet was present. At one point, the investigators reported witnessing Janet's head being slammed against the wall by an invisible hand, leaving them in no doubt that the poltergeist was a violent and malevolent entity. Despite the overwhelming evidence gathered by Gross and Playfair, skeptics accused the family, particularly Janet, of fabricating the events. Janet admitted that she had faked some of the incidents, but insisted that only a small fraction of the occurrences were her doing. The majority of the supernatural activity she claimed was real and far beyond her control. The Hodgsons were trapped in their own home, unable to escape the relentless torment of the poltergeist. The family lived in fear, unable to sleep, constantly watching for the next attack. Janet's health deteriorated as the strain of the haunting took its toll on her body and mind. Neighbors and friends grew concerned as the Hodgsons seemed to be spiraling into despair, isolated from the world by the terror within their home. At its peak, the haunting attracted the attention of the media, and the house became a spectacle for onlookers. Reporters and curious visitors would gather outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of the infamous poltergeist. The Hodgsons, desperate for help, allowed paranormal researchers to continue their investigations, but no one could offer a solution to the nightmarish events plaguing them. After almost 2 years of supernatural torment, the activity began to subside as mysteriously as it had begun. By 1979, the poltergeist seemed to lose its grip on the family. While the Hodgsons were relieved to see the terror fade, they were left emotionally scarred by the ordeal. Janet, now a young woman, struggled to move on from the trauma, often haunted by the memories of what she had endured. In the years that followed, the Enfield poltergeist case became one of the most famous and controversial paranormal investigations in history. Some continued to believe that the family had been the target of a genuine poltergeist, while others remained skeptical, attributing the events to hoaxes or mass hysteria. Despite the controversy, the case remains one of the most well-documented supernatural events, with countless eyewitnesses and recordings to back the Hodgson family's claims. The story of the Enfield poltergeist has inspired numerous books, documentaries, and films, cementing its place in the annals of paranormal history. Though many questions remain unanswered, the chilling events experienced by the Hodgson family continue to captivate and terrify those who hear their story. Whether the events were the result of a malevolent spirit or a trick of the mind, the Enfield poltergeist remains a chilling reminder of the unknown forces that may exist just beyond our understanding. A case where the boundary between reality and the supernatural was blurred, leaving behind a legacy of fear that persists to this day.